So game development has been an interest I've developed for the past few years, but I haven't really had any substantial breakthroughs at least until 2023, where I finally learned how to make my own shooter using the Easy FPS editor, essentially a game maker for people that want to make a 2.5D inspired shooter similar to Doom or Wolfenstein, as well as playing around with Python's Osina engine. Each project that was completed, no matter how small, gave me the confidence boost that I needed to push things even further in the future, where the goal for me is to eventually work with Python for games further down the track just to learn the language more, as well as using the Godot engine, which has been an engine I've been following ever since Godot 3 rolled in. It's an industry that interests a lot of younger crowds and people in general, and there's honestly no better time than now to get into game dev. But of course, the idea of making your own game is always easier said than done. The result is always more appealing, and when people realize how much time it actually takes to make your own game, they either give up or really put in the work that's needed. Solo game dev is kind of an enigma because it's something that's somewhat true to an extent, but not in literal terms when you factor in that the majority of people use pre-existing languages, assets, and software made by other people. But the end product can still be something that you've made yourself, and there's been tons of success stories of such games like Stardew Valley, Lisa the Painful RPG, Iconoclasts, Dusk, with the exception of the music made by Andrew Holsholt, Cave Story, and Undertale, the Touhou project, the list goes on. But when it comes to the 3D spectrum of game development, it is a much harder field that requires a lot more fine-tuning to get a workable product in terms of mechanics, environments, graphics, models, assets, etc. that plays and potentially sells well altogether, not to mention the third dimensional aspect that goes into all of the environments and the models that you see in the game. In most cases, you usually have smaller teams or a smaller studio working on a 3D game because of the amount of work that's ahead of them. And if you're a solo developer, it's quadruple, and it would seem easy to give up with this reality. But if you're at that point, then I would advise that you take a look at this game, something that not only looks good still, but was made by one person. The game is called Bright Memory, Episode 1. Bright Memory is a first-person shooter made by Zhen Zhencheng, also known as FYQD, who had been working on the game nearly every day of each month, about 27 days according to one article, during his spare time, to try and make a fun and visually impressive shooter using the Unreal 4 engine at the time, using the engine's blueprint system to get something that was workable and could be built on over time. It's a mix of FPS and hack and slash combined with different abilities that the player can use to get an advantage within each combat encounter. It's an incredibly short game too that you can beat in under an hour, making this more like a tech demo, but a really good one I might add. I remembered being pretty impressed when I first saw this back in 2019 and seeing that it was made by one guy, and I thought, holy shit, if one person can do this then I could too. Of course, it took the guy a considerable amount of time, modifying the gunplay and the movement, the models, adding in the various features that you can even use to customize your short experience, as well as utilizing the ray tracing tech that you have within the options menu. Its gameplay loop revolves around accumulating points and having a style meter similar to Devil May Cry, where the more accurate and varied you are with your attacks, the higher your score becomes. You have 3 main weapons, the assault rifle, the shotgun, and the pistol to use. Then there's all the different abilities including the blade, where you can do a flurry combo and attack from a short range. Each kill lets you pick up XP from fallen enemies, which you can then use to buy passive skills or new abilities within the game. Story-wise, there's not really much to work with here other than a Chinese model turned into a secret agent, infiltrating a facility only for another group of soldiers to show up, and then you see a familiar face, only for things to spiral out of control, teleporting to a new but familiar place. And yeah, honestly, don't worry too much about the story here, it gets fleshed out even more in the sequel game known as Bright Memory Infinite, or Episode 2. Anyway, it's a short and sweet experience from beginning to end with some genuinely impressive display of graphics and environmental detail put together, and there's even items that you can pick up or trivia within each loading screen each time you die. That tells you a bit about the developer himself. The game is clearly a passion project, and it's quite fun too with some replayability put into it as well. When you finish it, you could start a new game plus that has all of your experience and abilities carrying over, but even then you can get everything within 2 playthroughs. Replayability wise, it's only replayable if you're looking to get a higher overall score, or to try getting a no-def run, or a speed run to finish the game as fast as possible. It's at the end of the day a tech demo that's more like a proof of concept to simply pave the way for a bigger and more ambitious version of the game and its setting. The first Bright Memory should be seen more as a declaration of proof for those that are feeling overwhelmed or discouraged by the reality of 3D game development. There are plenty of avenues to approach it nowadays, and the developer just happened to use Unreal 4 for this project because it provided the best workflow for him to get the job done. The Unreal Engine has been something geared towards the development of shooters ever since the days of the first Unreal game, and it still hasn't changed even with the variety of games made with it now. Whether you're diving into C++ or are using the visual scripting system that Unreal has, you can still make a game like this. It just takes time, which is at the end of the day the hardest thing about game devs, is that it really does take time to make something enjoyable, to make something that you'd actually want to play. Keep in mind too that this game, like I said, was made during the developer's spare time, so whenever he would get free time to do it, through sacrifice and hard work for a dream to come true, he would put in the work and put in the hours to make this game. Whether it's 2D or 3D games that you're making, it's still never going to be easy, even for a prototype build, because there's just more hard work that lies ahead once you have something buildable. But it is satisfying to do, absolutely. Making a game from start to finish is one of the best ego boosters one can have. To see a product that people are playing, enjoying, and reviewing, and feeling a sense of pride from the outcome, telling yourself, hey, I made this. So if you're feeling discouraged or almost feel like giving up, remember that some people have made games like this by themselves. If they can do it, no matter how long it takes, you can too. But it's just going to take time, and you have to accept that before moving forward with your goals. Other than that, give Bright Memory a crack. It's a pretty good game for a tech demo. I'll also provide some resources regarding game dev in the description that will be worth looking into for anyone interested in 3D dev. But I'll also provide some quick advice. Learn to make the games that you actually like. Don't waste your time making ones that you don't like or don't see yourself playing at all. Don't be afraid to ask people the most basic questions. Join communities and communicate, and learn to decipher source code and find clones of games on GitHub and see how each game's code is structured differently. Thank you for watching.